more Native American relates to me as far as race. My tribe, the Lakota tribe up in South Dakota, are the poorest people in America. They have dirt floors. They build their own houses out of whatever scraps they can have. The poorest black person, they have cable TV, they have food stamps, they have shopping centers that they can walk to in most cases. And I mean, it transcends more than just black or white sometimes. Anyway, that's what I wanted to say. Indians are suffering a lot more than most people.
There is no better example in the United States of America today of the fact that the federal government cannot solve local problems than what you just said. We have a Bureau of Native American Affairs into which we have dumped hundreds of billions of dollars over the last 6 decades. And the statistics are just what this man said. It's off the charts bad. There's no Bureau of Jewish American Affairs. There's no Bureau of Greek American Affairs. It's the only one. And you look at the statistics for the Native American population, and it is at the bottom of the barrel. The federal government cannot solve local problems, period.
I just want to add to that, I mean, I think at the heart of all of these numbers, these problems, the Native American community, the African American community, increasingly so in the Hispanic community, is the breakdown of the family.
Absolutely.
Bingo.
It really is, and I think that we need to look at that and government's role in perpetuating it, frankly.
You know, and I'll just tell you, 50 years ago, you know, before the Great Society programs kicked in, the out-of-wedlock birth rate in America was 6%. Today it's 42%. Hispanic community is 58%, black community 75%. That's since the Great Society program. Sir, your question.
Hold on, just one second. This is, all the facts are great. How many times have we regurgitated the facts? We do it over and over and over again. Culturally speaking, look, it wasn't just the Great Society. It played a big part in it. But what they did culturally to push the breakdown of the family. When Murphy Brown came out and said, it's being a single mother is a good thing and it's empowering to do these things, they didn't stick in the intellectual realm. They took that intellect and they put it in the culture. And most people, as we know, don't pay attention to politics. They aren't learning these things in school. So where are they getting them? From the culture. And if we do not make ourselves a presence in the culture, we can never reach the uninformed, I hate that word, but the uninformed voter. When you look at Barack Obama, okay, he goes on Pimp with a Limp. He goes on Flozell. We rail and get mad instead of learning a lesson.
Absolutely.
These people, their vote counts the same as your vote. If you cannot win them intellectually, then maybe we can change our tactics up and go in culturally like progressives have been doing for the last 50 years.
And I would say that, you know, think about all the money that has been put into super PACs. I mean, imagine if the amount of money that was put into super PACs, the millions and millions and millions of dollars, what if we'd bought a movie studio? What if we had bought NBC? I think you're absolutely right. It is in the culture. I think a lot of Republicans, conservatives, I have 7 children, by the way. Most people have, yeah, it's like, what? I do.
Start when you were 11?
Yeah. I have 7 kids. And most, I think, conservatives, they dream of their kids growing up to be you know, doctors or lawyers or entrepreneurs and businessmen. You know, if your kid has a talent, your grandkid has a talent in the arts, in television production, and writing and acting, journalism, all these areas where we don't have people there, I say, you know, again, it starts at the home. You know, if I have a son who's 13 years old, he loves movie making, we encourage it. Because that's what we need. We need more people with that kind of sensibility going into those professions. We just don't exist at those, in those places. You have to be on The View. You have to be on those, you know, these radio shows that the president's on. Anyway, sorry.
Okay, we're going to try to get through the questions, so please get to your question as soon as possible.
Okay. Hi, my name is Lawton Yee. I am the vice chair of the Brooklyn Libertarian Party. I'm also a card-carrying member of the Libertarian Party, LP.org. Before I get to my question, I saw that Sean Hannity special about black conservatives. I don't know if any were in it, but that's you were there. Okay, terrific show. But I want to see in the very near future a show hosted by probably John Sasso, black libertarians. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. As I said, I'm part of the Libertarian Party, and we're trying to get more members to get more people in here. Now, I see people as individuals, but we're all bean counters, come on now, and I want to get more blacks in here. We only have one black member, John Clifton, who is our perennial candidate. He ran against he ran against Hillary in 2000. And okay, now, Mr. Wilburn, you promised to give me 5 tips on how to get more blacks to reach them and get more members in here. Can you tell me that? Also, will these five tips, would they also pertain to FreedomFest? I don't know if you noticed, there aren't too many blacks attendees here, you know, except for a couple of them.
To unpack the entire 5, we don't have that kind of time for me to go through all 5, although you can go to the website and buy a DVD.
Capitalism!
blackandconservative.com. Don't leave without getting some stuff. But the essence of the 5-point plan that I've put together is relationship building. So what we need to, the question that conservatives, libertarians, Republicans, Constitutionalist Party, whatever, the question that we always ask is how can we get more black votes or how can we get more Hispanic votes? My answer to that question is we can't. We aren't there yet. We've got to first pour the foundation of relationship. Then on top of that, we begin building the ask for the vote. Parachuting a team of people into the neighborhood 2 months before an election, handing out flyers saying, oh, by the way, we care about you too. That's not inclusion. That's an insult. What we need to do is rather than ask for your vote, how about we ask how many kids you have? What we've done in Colorado with my group is we have adopted a school. We went to a couple of Republican, well, I'm a Republican, you're a Libertarian, you could do the same thing, a couple of Republican clubs and said instead of meeting here every third Saturday of the month, let's put a call in to St. Christie's, which is a school on the south central side of Colorado Springs, and ask the vice principal, how can we bless you? What do you need? We got 10 guys that are good with a hammer, that are good with a set of pliers. We can wax floors, we can polish the gym floor, we can pick up the yard. What do you need? And then followed through. And so now, a year and a half into this thing, one Saturday a month, 10 or 12 or 15 Republicans show up, haven't asked for a thing. We don't want to get paid, certainly. We don't want any recognition. We don't want anything except to help bless your school. And guess what now? The parents and vice principals and teachers and stuff of that establishment, guess what their impression of Republicans is becoming? Nice group of people. You know, those guys are actually all right. We haven't asked for a vote, won't ask for a vote. But we're pouring a foundation. The 5 things that I've put together is how you develop that foundation. I just can't unpack it right here and right now, but I'll meet you afterwards.
Yes, ma'am. Next question.
News from my generation. So my name's Thelma Okole. I go to the College of Charleston, and I run a Liberty group on campus. And obviously, I think the Confederate flag going down is a good thing, but it has nothing to do with the day-to-day lives of young people and their future. So I table sometimes, and I talk to students, and I think that I've realized that disillusionment about the government among our generation is uniform. So I think there's a potential for a new path to a new audience, just based on talking about free markets and individualism, which I do, and everyone in our generation, regardless of their background, is receptive to that. That's what I wanted to say.
Beautiful thought. Understand this, our generation, we don't have to fight last generation's war. Those were your wars. Our wars now are about capitalism, about escaping poverty, about getting big government. We don't want that old war. Y'all can keep fighting it if y'all want to. We have moved our battlefield into a green field filled with money, and that's where we are. We don't want 60s fights here. That's not where we're here to do. And majority of us, we've come up integrated. We have never had to deal with the crap that liberals and progressives want to keep. We've never had to deal with that. And we are coming up on a generation of people that know this isn't our battle. This isn't our fight.
Yep.
My name is Derrick Tate, and to piggyback off of that economic argument, because that's the battlefront that I fight on, is anyone willing to touch the third rail kind of in the black community about the black church, the wealth that goes into the black church, and the philosophy that is taught within the black church in terms of your futures, your treasures are in the future, don't worry really about today, a lot of collectivism and a lot of socialism. Is anyone willing to really tackle, because that ultimately, the most powerful institution in the black community is the black church.
When you take the Bible and you mix it with Marxism, you get black liberation theology. And that is what we have in the black church. So you can have pastors stand up and say abortion is okay right after they preach, God knows you before you were in the womb. You can have pastors stand up and say they do not feed their flock. They are not making, you have these big, beautiful churches in the inner city. You walk outside and there's prostitutes and there's drug dealers and there's death, destruction, and poverty, but they feel safe within that building. They feel safe within their church. So a pastor will stand up and say, we are godly because more people are on food stamps. That's how we feed the poor. We push government to do it. Well, when Jesus wanted people to feed the poor, he said, disciples, feed them. He did not say, go to Rome and have Rome feed them. And that's where we are right now with the church. The churches have turned over, especially in the black community, they have turned over that responsibility to the government, and they've done it willingly. And that is one of the reasons half the time I don't even bother with black clergy. Because if they do want to do something, they want to go in and they want to talk about abortion or they want to talk about gay marriage. I am pro-life. And I really don't care on the marriage issue. I could really care less. But it sticks to say, and I ask them over and over again, it's ineffective. It's ineffective. Why do you keep doing it? And that is the point where you just have to realize that the black church is not going to be this spark. It is not going to be this revolution. It is not what it was in the 1930s and the 1940s. In the 1930s and the 1940s, it was the black church that kept eugenics out of the black community. It was the black church that said, no, we're not going to push people on poverty. We will feed our people. The black church had a backbone then. Today, it doesn't. When the major faces of the black church are Reverend Jesse Jackson and Reverend Al Sharpton, then that should tell you where the state of the black church in America sits today. And it's not all black pastors. If you don't fit into this category, please, I am not including you in it. But it is enough of them that it makes them the majority rather than the minority.
I would just add, if I could just add to that, in the Hispanic community, which we're very largely Catholic, the majority Catholic, we are facing, I think we have a Pope who comes from a Latin American strain of outlook. So that's something we're very concerned about. I think we're going to see in September that it's going to be, at least for the Hispanic community, I think, a little bit like the Beatles landing. And of course, as you know, Alan, we've opened up the Congress. There's going to be a state joint address in Congress. So it's going to be very interesting because I think the run-up to this, he'll be in Cuba first. He's in Latin America right now, where some very troubling statements have been said. And to be fair, the Pope has had a mixed bag. On the one hand, he'll say things like, you know, man earns his dignity by earning his bread. He's shown a lot of concern about youth unemployment in Europe in particular, but in other parts of the world. But then other times, I think that Argentinian, frankly, liberation theology type talk kind of comes out too. So it's going to be a challenge in the Hispanic community to see what happens in September when he comes to the United States.
Yes, sir.
Tom Drake from the Chicago area. First, greetings to Colonel West. My wife is a big admirer of yours as a military man, as an elected political official, and as a political leader. So when I get back to Chicago, I'm going to let her know that you made a very impressive presentation of the two panels.
And tell Rahm Emanuel I said hi.
Okay. He'll be the first I call. In any case, Colonel West asked about the response to the racism and xenophobia charge and why the left is so successful. And that's because those of us on the right are so lousy in responding to it. They run like frightened chickens. And whenever I don't make it a habit of being around that crowd at all. But if I'm in a situation where I have no option and they get anywhere near that, I get back with, you must be talking about Reverend Al Sharpton from New York City. Mm-hmm. And but Republicans in general and the leaders in particular, I mean, they just seem to be frightened of anybody throwing a false opportunistic charge of racism. Until we act like adults, act like men and women, they're going to continue using these tactics. It's just that simple.
You're absolutely right, and I'm sure that all of us have experienced this. You know, sellout, Uncle Tom,
Coconut.
a coconut, Oreo, white man's porch monkey, house N-word.
Yeah.
You know, but the thing is that when those epithets are being used by people who are black or Hispanic or by the white progressives, this is what you have to understand. You're winning the debate, and you don't need to back down, because the name calling is just meant for one single thing: to get you to shut up.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
the sad thing is that on our side, being it conservative, libertarian, constitutionalist, Republican, what have you, is Pavlovian. So each time they come out and they use racism or xenophobia or you're sexist or whatever, you know, we recant and we recoil. And so therefore you are emboldening them to continue to do that. And so the thing that we all have to understand, look, it's very simple for me. I was in combat. You know, calling me a name ain't gonna bother me one dadgum bit, okay? But you all have to find the moral courage and the character so that when they use those terms and those phrases, you just continue to press on. Because you are on the side that is right, and if they are not able to engage you in intellectual debate or the cultural debate, don't allow them to go to the name calling and get you to self-censor. That's what they're looking at.
They use these tactics because they have no evidence on their side and they have no case.
Well, that's the Saul Alinsky tag. How many people here have ever read Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky? If you have not read Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky, you're not prepared to be on this ideological battlefield. Okay, I got 3 minutes, so quickly.
Just one quick one. I miss Andrew to death. Andrew Breitbart said it the best I've ever heard anyone say it. And they call you a racist. And let them follow it up. Don't get mad. Don't let them come up with the next line. And you'll see how many of them shut themselves up.
Or say, I know you are, but what am I? I know you are, but what am I? I know you are, but what am I?
Yes, sir.
Okay, quickly. My wife and I have a blended family where our 5 children now have given us 7 grandchildren, 4 of which would be classified as biracial. So we find ourselves in a situation where we have 4 of our grandchildren in a different race than we are. And this kind of classification I find troubling. And the fact that we also have a biracial president who mainly speaks for, it seems like, the black race. And I just wanted to ask your opinion of how much you think that kind of classification is a concern for all of us.
Amen. Well, I think the thing that you're looking at is the means by which we're hyphenating, dividing ourselves, you know, along the lines. And again, I think that we have to start talking about the American interests. It is not about a black interest. It's not about Hispanic interest. We find those common things that are about freedom, are about liberty, are about the American dream. And we don't do a good job of that. You know, it's amazing to me that really when you go back and you think of it, I mean, it was because of not Democrats, but, you know, Republicans that the civil rights legislation was able to be successful back in 64, 65. But guess what? We don't talk about that. And so we have ceded, you know, Sonny's right, as far as the culture, we have ceded so much territory over to the other side to redefine history and to redefine the relationships that have been out there. You know, I find it very offensive that the Democrat Party would try to lecture anyone in the United States of America about racism. Because if you look at their history, I mean, it has been deeply rooted in racism. But, you know, when you have, you know, let's be very honest, this is about identity politics. Why did they run the first black president? Because they knew that everyone would want a historical moment. Why are they looking to run the first woman president? Because everyone's going to want a historical moment. Then there'll be Julian Castro, who used to be the mayor down in San Antonio, who was one of the most far left, you know.
Comes from out of La Rata.
La Raza, I say La Raza, I'm from South. And Lulac and all those guys. And then what's going to come after that? And so if we are able, you know, if we are not competent enough to see what they're doing in using identity politics based upon race, sex, or whatever to prop themselves up politically, then we're going to lose this fight for the soul of this country. So I think that we have to stop, with, these classifications. I mean, Rachel Dolezal, I feel black, so now I'm black. I knew that would hit your nerve. But this transracial and all of these different things. So I think the most important conversation, like we said, we got to talk about freedom.
Yeah.
That's the most important aspect of the United States of America.
Can I just add really quick too?
Yep.
I mean, you think about all the talk about immigration as it pertains and how it's being used as a wedge issue with Hispanics. It ranks number 4 in terms of concerns of Hispanics, behind economy, behind jobs, behind education. So again, this is something the media and the agitators are putting forward to create the impression that conservatives don't like Hispanics. And of course, there's always some idiot who, sort of says something stupid, and then, a lot of you here don't probably watch Univision, but a lot of Hispanics do, and what they'll do is they'll loop that about 35,000 times during that week and remind everybody that that was a Republican state legislator from God knows where. And so that will happen. But again, freedom, economics, jobs, opportunity, that's what we got to talk about.
Last question, sir.
Yes. Just a little background. I grew up in Brooklyn, New York, of Jewish families who were in the Holocaust. And so many of my friends, when I were growing up, they would tell me about the horrific things their parents had been through. But they always said, because we had such a difficult time to come to America, it's all the more important that you go out and do great things. And people will hate you because you're Jewish, but you don't let that stop you. And so in the Jewish community, there was this theme of we were gone through the worst of times, but we never told ourselves that we could not succeed. And I see the politics of the left are doing something far, far worse than anything that ever takes place with any racist comments. They tell their own people you can't succeed. Exactly. And when your friends and your family around you are telling you you can't succeed, how do you go through those difficult moments when you question yourself, that everybody will go through? So I would argue probably one of the best arguments for conservatives to make is the language of telling any ethnic group that you can't succeed is far, far, far more damaging than any racist comment will ever be.
That is the soft bigotry of low expectations. Well, look, we, on behalf of Rachel Campos, Duffy, Sonnie Johnson, Derrick Wilburn, I want to thank you all for spending some time with us to talk about this great topic of freedom and race. Thank you.